let's be real. Who doesn't love banana bread? I love banana bread. So making banana bread should be very easy. It's very simple. It requires some dry ingredients and wet ingredients. So the idea is to mix all of the dry ingredients first, and then you will add the wet ingredients. Wet ingredients include oil or butter if you're using butter, eggs. You also mix that with your sugar. So all of those will be considered your liquid ingredients. So in this mixing bowl, I have some flour. So I have 1.5, so it's a cup and a half of pastry flour. I'm gonna add a third of a teaspoon of salt, half teaspoon baking soda, half teaspoon baking powder. My recipe calls for butter. I'm gonna substitute, and I'm gonna use light olive oil instead. I just gonna substitute 1 to 1, so equal amount. So my recipe calls for quarter of a cup. So that's what I'm gonna be using. So that's equals to 2 ounces. It calls for three-thirds of a cup of sugar. So I'm gonna lower the amount of sugar because I'm gonna be using more bananas instead. My recipe calls for, let's see, 1 cup of bananas, so I'm gonna be using probably 1.5 cups. So I'm gonna use 2 bananas to be more specific. So my bananas are really ripened. They're very sweet. So I don't think I need all of the sugar. So to start off with our recipe, I first add salt, and then I will add baking powder and baking soda. Important that you measure your ingredients precisely. If you add too much baking soda and too much baking powder, that's not good. The flavor will change, as well as you may run the risk of having a kind of like a disaster in your oven. So be very careful with that. Now we have our baking soda, our baking powder. We have all of our dry ingredients. So we're gonna start off with smashing our bananas. You can do this ahead of time. If you're doing it by hand, mixing by hand using a mixing bowl. So what you can do is so you can take a wire whisk and you can smash your bananas until they get really soft, really like smashed. But I happen to have a electrical mixer, which is a little easier. Make sure you use the paddle attachment, because if you use the wire whisk, all the flour will get stuck in the center and it's really difficult to take it out. And you don't want to use the hook either, because then you're not going to be picking anything. So at this point, what I normally do, yes, you got to be very careful. So what I normally do is, if I'm using butter, I start off with the butter and the sugar, make a paste. It's called creaming method. But I'm gonna omit that step because I'm using oil instead. So I just gonna start off with smashing my bananas at really low speed. They take very short amount of time because they're really ripe. So then I'm gonna add my eggs, 2 eggs. So we added so far 2 bananas, 2 eggs. I will now add my oil. And I will then add the sugar. 2/3 of a cup, but I'm gonna use less. And I'm using granulated sugar, so you may want to use your choice of sugar. If you prefer brown sugar, it also goes well with banana bread. So instead of using 3/3, I'll use 2/3 of a cup. Like that. So aside, I have my pan where I will bake my cake. I'm gonna add a little bit of oil spray. I use oil spray because it's vegetable and it's so easy to grease my pan. Of course, you can always use soft butter. Now that I have that, so I made a really nice, very soft mixture with my bananas, eggs, and the sugar. Remember, priorly we have mixed all of our dry ingredients together. Your flour must be sifted. I use one of this very fine strainer to sift my flour. It does the job really, really fine. Make sure you sift the flour first and then measure it. Because if you measure it and then sift it, chances are that you have more than what you need, because flour naturally packed. So be very careful with extra amount of flour, because that's gonna dry out your batter. You don't want that. You want a batter that you can easily spread into your baking pan. At this point, I have some vanilla extract, just kind of eyeball about a half teaspoon. This is a flavoring ingredient. It's not going to make a difference in terms of the final result structure, but it will in terms of flavor. It's just a flavoring ingredient. It's not a key ingredient in the formation or the making of the bread. So don't be scared if you don't have that. At this point, I can continue mixing my my ingredients. Nothing is gonna interfere. There's no flour yet. The moment you add the flour, that's when you want to be very careful, because banana bread is considered a quick bread. It should be quick, as stated. So you don't need extra mixing. Over mixing your batter is going to develop a lot of gluten, which is not desirable in your banana bread. That happens, then you're gonna have like big bubbles of air forming inside, and those are called tunnels, which then will interfere in the texture of the bread. So for quick breads, gluten development is not a desirable thing. So I'm gonna stop my mixer, and now I'm gonna add the all the dry ingredients: my salt, my baking powder, baking soda, and flour. And at this point, I just kind of give at a really low speed, really quick mix, and that's it. You're still gonna see some flour that has not been incorporated yet, but you will then finish that using a spatula. I hope I have one in my drawer here. Yes, I do. So you take your spatula and kind of fold the ingredients, and I'll show you the mixture, how it looks. It should be soft, it should be not over liquidy, but kind of soft. And into my pan it goes. I have my oven already preheated at 350. You always want to make sure that you have your oven preheated, because the moment you add your baked good in the oven, they should begin to to caramelize the outer part, caramelize the sugars so it builds structure. So the mixture went about half of my baking pan. Pardon me. So when it bakes, it's gonna rise, and it will be probably like half inch above the edge of the baking pan. So this is how you make your banana bread. At this point, you can put some nuts on top. You can put some chocolate chips or whatever you decide to put on top. So this is the process of making banana bread. Very simple, very easy. I hope you enjoy it.